should we begin?
Go on. I just started recording.
Okay, awesome. Hey everyone, nice to meet you. Nice to be here, and thank you for attending. So this is going to be basically a session where I share how I go through contracts and how I do auditing. So I think the methodology of auditing depends quite heavily on what exactly you are auditing for. So basically, if you are auditing in a uh, competition, and if you're auditing for a bug bounty, or if you're auditing for private audit, then the methodology differs. So I primarily do private audits. That is what has been the most successful route for me. So I'll probably tell you how I do that. And yeah, let's dive into how I do the auditing for my private audits. I'll be sharing my screen if that is all right.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Yeah, is my screen visible?
1 second.
Yeah,
Yes.
awesome. So basically, this is the audit methodology. So this is a basically an Indian suite. This is called the Kaju Katli. So if you notice the shape, this starts at a very edgy shape. It goes on broadening till the middle, and then it goes down to a very narrow edge again at the end, right?
Brother,
So
just one thing. We can only see
yeah,
your Discord, not really the screen you're showing.
Yeah, we only see
okay.
the Discord, man.
Let me try once more. Oh, god damn it. Now probably I think you should be able to see my HackMD.
Yes,
Yes. Go
that's
on.
it.
Sorry for that. So yeah, so this is an Indian dish called Kaju Katli. This is a sweet dish. So this shape will basically help you, uh, you know, visualize how I think about going with my audits. So I start from this very edge here. So you'll see this starts off as an edge, and then I keep on going broad, 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 broad till I reach this middle point, which is the broadest that I am in the protocol. And then I again go on, keep on narrowing down till the very end, and that is where basically I end my audits. Because where to end your audit is actually another question that has very subjective answers. It's not a clear binary answer. So that is also something that we can discuss later on. So yeah, we start from the bottom, approach the middle, become large, and then again become narrow down, going to the top. That is what I wanted to show you with this shape. So that means when I first get the contract, I do not study the docs, and I do not try to get the larger picture about the protocol, because I think that if you have the larger picture about the protocol, and if you realize what the protocol is trying to do, it corrupts your mind with more information that is necessary at this point. Because when you have a lot of context about a particular code, then you start to basically become blind to the very obvious mistakes that might have been done in the contract.
Wow, very
And that is
interesting.
basically, yes, and if you think about it, that is basically the reason why the devs do not see the bugs themselves, right? Because they have so much context about the protocol, they do not see the very obvious bugs that are there in the contracts, right?
Makes
So
total sense.
that, yeah, so that is what I mean by starting at the very edge here without any information whatsoever. I mean, I think more information at the beginning just corrupts your mind. So that is not what we want to do. So this is the time to focus completely on lower level details. And by lower level details, I mean the implementational issues. I mean, I do not know if implementational is a word, but I mean the implementation issues. And these are the kinds of issues that spring up uh, all the time during audits and contests, irrespective of the type of the protocol that is being audited. So for example, if a protocol is using call or delegate call for a target address, many times it happens that the target address is not being validated, right? Because a call or delegate call will return true if the target address is address 0 or an EOA. That is something we do not want. So that is something you can directly check irrespective of whether you have context on the protocol or not. You can directly check whether the functions have the property to properly handle the weird ERC20 tokens. You can check whether the check effects interaction pattern is being followed everywhere. You can verify the calculations being used. And you might think that verifying the calculations will take up a lot of your time, which might be true in the beginning, but over time you start seeing patterns in the calculation that is being used, right? So take for example in lending protocols, the most common type of calculation that you will see is the calculation of your part of the interest based on the lending pool tokens that you have with yourself, right? So it looks very complex when you look at it and try to understand it. But if you have looked at enough lending protocols, the calculation, checking the calculation simply becomes a 4 to 5 minute exercise, right? And then there is price oracle validations, whether it is completely done or not. So there are several things in a price oracle that could go wrong. For example, all the function calls to a price oracle should be wrapped in a try catch block so that you have the ability to maneuver to a different um, address when multi-sigs revoke your access to their oracles. You have to go for the latest function, latest round data, and not the get correct answer, which is deprecated function. And there are a lot of points, correct points to using this oracles, which I have mentioned here in my you know tweet. I mean Twitter thread that is what should I say, pinned to my profile. So these are all things which you can check out irrespective of what kind of protocol you are auditing, right? So uh, now the second thing that I do without the context is something where the experience as a dev comes in handy. So I think on Twitter, Dev Dacian talks about it. He says that the developer have biases, and as a uh, hacker, white hat hacker, you need to be able to exploit those biases and see what biases could have snuck in and try to exploit that. For example, um, in a lot of different protocols, you would have seen something like this: enum status is pending, shipped, accepted, rejected, cancelled, right? However, one very important thing to notice here is that for any status, value in the enum. So pending would probably be fine, but just imagine what would have happened if the first status here was accepted or shipped, something like that.
This is really interesting,
Then
right? So you're telling us
yes,
that in a struct, the default value is always the first.
correct. Yes, sir. So similar to that, if you have, for example, just let me grab something. Sorry. So if you look here in concurrent stream, okay. So just to give you an idea, this is a contract where you do not have any idea what this is doing. Sorry, yeah, where you do not have any idea what it is doing. But if you see a struct like this, struct streaming wallet, where a salary is given, release is given, start is given, duration is given, and a streaming wallet ID is given. So this thing that should strike you immediately is that if zero is a valid streaming wallet ID, then a lot of things can go wrong. Because even if you have not initialized your streaming wallet, then it is still a wallet with a valid ID, right? So you'll see here in this def comment that for
Really
streaming wallet
interesting.
ID, valid start from 1, 0 is not a valid streaming wallet ID. So yeah, so these are the kind of things that can come in handy if you have some dev experience. So if you have some dev experience, that is like really awesome. And if you do not have it, I will suggest you to go through this. Um, yep. This particular article by Dev Dacian, I do not know his exact correct name, so
He's here, by the
sorry if
way.
I'm pronouncing. Oh, nice. Hey, Dacian, how are you? Brilliant article about it. So this explores a lot of biases that developers have. I have a few more that I think could be added here. We'll talk to Dacian about it later. So yeah, so this is the second part of what I do in the beginning. Sorry, yeah.
Can I
So we
talk
start.
about something really fast, like because it's really important the point that you just made about how we should be aware of our own weaknesses and regarding being how a developer turns blind when he's so inserted in the context. This is really
Yes.
interesting, and probably the biggest skill in auditing is being able to don't fall on your own biases. Can we just talk a little bit about that? What is your method, to achieve this?
Okay. I think I cannot explain it very well in the sense that the best basketball players aren't necessarily the best coaches in that sense. So I used to be a developer at a protocol called Sublime Finance. Sublime Finance was a lending protocol, and there I did quite a lot of coding for a certain lending product. And when that went for audit and the audit results came back, then I realized that what are the mistakes that I had done. So things like letting the default values of certain things be valid, uh, things like not having sufficient validation for your external functions, basically where any external function uh, that do not have an access control. So basically, anyone can interact with it. That is something that should be on your priority list as a developer and as someone who's trying to hack it, because that is the only entry point that a hacker has, right? That is technically basically the only entry point that a hacker has. So you have to trust your question your assumptions, like, have I considered everything that could be inputted here? Like if I am taking a string as an input, does it mess it up if the same thing is passed as capital letters? Does it mess it up if bytes are passed as strings? Does it mess it up if an array of characters is passed? Things like that, which it may not be possible in Solidity, but it may be possible in Yule assembly. I mean, the possibilities here are endless, and you should spend a lot of time in basically examining your external contracts, so external functions. So that is something that you have there. And I think that is the benefit of audits in the first place, that someone can come in, and people usually say that they have fresh eyes basically means that you have very less context compared to the developer, and that is good in the sense that you are able to find the obvious mistakes, the very, what should I say, non-intuitive mistakes, something
Very
that you would
rookie.
have. Yes, correct. Something that you would have said, of course it works, of course it makes sense. I mean, what can go wrong here? Things like that. Uh, when you do not have any context of the protocol, those are the things that you can focus on, right? So that is the point where you go and attack on such mistakes as a white hat or as a black hat. I do not know. I don't know, black hat. So yeah.
Awesome.
So right. So we started from this very edge. So this edge was not knowing anything about the protocol. We went ahead and we saw what are the implementation issues that arise in every protocol. We marked them, and we marked them in our code so that we can look at them later. And then the second part is what are the biases that a developer could have had, and is the biases that the developer could have had, has it slipped in the code? That is the next thing that I check. So this second point, for any for loop, this is directly from a tweet by Pasha Kram. Like, he's the real OG of private audits. So this was a tweet from him, and I basically used to do this, but I did not have a formal definition for it. I mean, whenever I saw for loops, my spidey senses tingled. But he gave a very accurate, very actionable step on what to do when you find a for loop. So whenever you find a for loop, ask these three questions. What if I pass an empty array to this? What if I pass duplicate items in that array? And what if I pass the default values in the array? And you will be surprised to see how many times you're able to find something just by questioning these three questions in whenever you come across a for loops. This is very, what should I say, impactful in the sense that
Wow.
as a developer, yeah, as a developer, you have a lot of context. You are basically focused on the larger picture that, hey, I want to liquidate a lot of people all at once. So of course I'll be passing the addresses. But what if I passed, I called the liquidate function without any address? You do not think of that as a developer because you have so much context, right? You're not looking at the code. You're trying to tell a story with your code as a developer. So you have to look specifically at the code and not at the story that the code is trying to tell at this point in time. And that is where you can ask dumb questions. I mean, dumb as in dumb from the perspective of a developer. Dumb questions like what if I pass an empty array, what if I pass a duplicate array, what if I pass a default values in the array, things like that. So I think these are these are in the Web2 world. These are things handled by the QA department. They do a lot of things like that. For example, if you design a calculator, the first thing that they will try is what is minus a multiplied by 0 or c, things like that. So yeah, they try to break things, and that is probably how you should take a first look at the contracts. So yeah, the another thing that I've found a lot happening is that the dev that has designed the protocol, they are trusting someone that they should not, right? Recently, I think someone from Paladin, Charles, I guess, posted that some protocol rugged, where basically they had opened a swap and their swap contracts were upgradable, and as soon as they had enough liquidity in their contracts, they upgraded their protocol implementation and just ran away with the money. So many times what happens is that you are trusting the external contracts, you are trusting external oracles, you are trusting transaction.gas price. Believe it or not, that should not be trusted now, because transaction.gas price is basically a base fee plus a tip, right? So a malicious validator can demand a huge uh, uh, tip and basically jack up the transaction.gas price to a large extent. And if your code does not check what is the value of transaction.gas price before making any transaction, then you will lose out a lot of value while uh, whenever the code is run with transaction.gas price. So I don't think that I found any particularly good gas oracle, but I think they would come up pretty soon because this issue has been around for some time.
Can you explain what a gas oracle is?
So yeah, so what you'll see here is that so you see that the gas is given as 42 GUI, and the base fee is 42 GUI, and the priority fee is 0. So basically, what happens is that Etherscan is the one telling you what is the gas fees, and in general, if you had to find out the what should I say, gas price within your contract. For example, if you had something like this, uh, yeah, if you had something like this in your code, so you are basically dependent on whatever the validator tells you as the transaction.gas price to calculate the total fees, right? And the
Wow,
transaction dot
that's so
yeah
cool. I never
the
used that.
transaction dot yeah this is basically the sum of a base fee plus a tip for the validator, right? So the base fee is something that can be controlled by the validator, and the tip for the validator can be controlled by the validator. So they can quote such a high transaction gas price that it, takes out a lot of money out of your protocol. And here there are no checks on what is the range of transaction or gas price here, right? So this can go up to, like, I don't know, like a huge amount, and you would still pay the total fee here. So that is something you should not be trusting ever since EIP 5059 came out. And I think this particular issue is being flagged more and more as of now. Last time I saw it was in one of Trust's recent private audits. So yeah, that was there. And this basically tells you that as a developer, you should not be trusting stuff very readily, because when you are a developer, you are focused on making things work, right? And it would never cross your mind that transaction dot gas price would could be malicious. So it is our jobs as someone who are actively trying to break the protocol, that we tell them that, hey, this assumption is not very safe and 100% decentralized. You have to have some kind of limits between which the prices can be. So that's what the difference between someone who has zero context for the protocol and is trying to break it will put in front of you, rather than someone who is having a lot of context and is trying to find very deep seated, uh, very, you know, heavily logical bugs in the contract. Because when you are looking for very logical bugs in the contract, in the financial concepts, underlying financial concept of the protocol itself, you would not be paying attention to stuff like this, like whether the transaction or gas price can also go bad. So yeah, this is what I start off with. And once that is done, I have marked all the issues that I found. I determine that these issues are actually issues and they are not non-issues. And then I just simply move forward. I do not yet categorize the severity, because I simply do not have any context of the protocol yet. I know that this is an issue, but I do not know how severe is that issue, right? For example, what could I say? Let's say .call here. Yeah. So for example, see, this HEVM address .call is being used to make this call, so and so. And this HEVM address is being set at what? The, what should I say? At the constructor time, at the time of the deployment of the contract. So this would be a low severity issue because there is very less chance that the HEVM address is malicious, or it is an EOA, or it is an address zero. So it is not a big issue that this HEVM address is not being validated here itself, right? But however, if such an address was being passed by a user itself, and that was being used to make a target call to or a delegate call to, that would be a high severity issue, right?
Wow.
Yeah. So till point three, you know whether issues exist or not, but you do not yet categorize them, because to categorize them as high, low, severe, or medium, you need context of the protocol. So how many people are bored till now? I
Bro,
mean,
this
I
is a
think I
fucking
saw
cool. This is a lot of alpha, man. This is something that I'm gonna watch 10 times. I mean, whoever is bored seeing this should get out of here.
no, no,
Yeah, this
man.
is awesome.
Okay,
I'm
sorry. Anyway, so
I'm gonna watch it 10 times, man. The alpha is
oh,
really good. Like this is the first time I hear a lot of stuff. This is my
oh,
first time. Keep on going,
thank
man. Keep supplying us.
you. Yeah, appreciate it. By the way, is the font big enough? Can you read what is written, or should I?
Yeah, it's perfect.
Is it fine? Okay, cool. Um, Fine. So now I am done with this part. Basically, I have moved from the edge to basically the middle of the Kaju Katli, right? So this middle signifies that now I'm going for broad information. I'm not looking for very specific information, right? Here I was looking looking for very specific issues in the code implementation itself. Now here I'm looking at the larger broad picture, right? So let's see how I do that. So now to do that, to get the broader picture, I read the docs. Surprise. I study about the underlying financial concepts. For example, if there, well, most of the time the audits come in for protocols that are trying to reimagine options and derivatives and swaps, things like that. And this is like studying about the underlying financial concept becomes necessary, very necessary when protocols are trying to experiment on top of already very risky uh, financial instruments such as options and uh, swaps, whatever. So what you realize when you actually study about the underlying financial concepts, when you actually study about options and swaps before jumping into how perpetual futures work, if you already know how futures works, you'll realize that the new variation that the TeFi protocol is trying to do, it is not actually new. It was tried out earlier by some startup, by some particular stock exchange, by some particular scammer or people who are in the jail. And it was dropped later because of some reason. It was already done in the traditional finance market and it was dropped for some reason. Find that reason and ascertain to 100% of your satisfaction that this protocol does away with that reason convincingly. So this basically prepares you for a bit of threat modeling on the protocol. So is this point clear?
Very
Uh,
clear and very important.
yeah, cool. So I mean,
But
as I'm telling you
how
again, you
often do you actually find coders the same or the same implementation? Like what tools are you looking to search? You're doing that on Google? Are you using any specific tool for that?
right. I do not use a specific tool for that. To be honest, I think if you search for things on YouTube itself, it is good enough. And I happen to have a brother who is, pretty good at finances. He's done his
Nice.
MBA from pretty decent college. So, we can talk about finance stuff, and he is kind of a financial history buff too. So I have a cheat code with me. Sorry, I cannot share that.
By the way,
But
guys,
yes,
I don't know if you know this, but Rahul comes from the top schools in India.
yeah. So yeah, awesome. So yeah, so basically, if you try to study the history of money itself, you'll realize that people have thought hard and long about everything that people are thinking about now in DeFi. And it is very likely that the new approach that this DeFi protocol is following was done by certain, companies, certain market here and there. So it might take you some time, but you will find it. And that is why at the very beginning of the presentation, I said that since I'm primarily into private audits, I get the time to do it. But if you are on a code arena contest and you have like 5 days, 4 days, you do not have the time to do it. So, I mean, just take whatever you can from this presentation and implement what works for you, discard what doesn't. So this is my fourth step on what I do, on what I usually try to do. Um, right. Because for example, there are things like there is a big, not a big right now, but there was a very big movement in DeFi about under collateralized lending protocols, right? And you'd think that this can only be solved in DeFi and things like that. But if you would realize, there are a lot of uh, traditional finance companies that offer under collateralized loans right now. For example, Prodigy Finance gives it to people who make it to really good colleges. For example, there are government-run schemes in Bangladesh that give it to people, that give it to actually women entrepreneurs, things like that. So if you study those models and analyze the risks there, it will give you a very good, very great idea of what are the threats that this protocol face, not because of the code that is written, but because of the underlying economic principles. And all that I'm saying might seem, very hard to do, very long time taking process, but trust me, it takes you less than 2 to 3 hours to study in depth how the Bangladesh uh, government schemes for loans to women entrepreneurs work, how Prodigy Finance work. It takes you less than like an hour or so because that is enough detail that you want. You don't want to know more than that.
And now we have AI too, right?
Yeah, of course. Of course, you can use ChatGPT. You can ask them question. You can use Word. Yeah, almost forgot about it. Thanks. Good point. So yeah, okay. So now having read the docs, now having known the underlying financial concepts, so that I actually understand what the docs are trying to say. Now I really understand what the protocol or the code is actually meant to do. Now I simply reread the contracts, but this time in a much more cohesive way. I do not, try to find mistakes here. I'm just trying to read the code. And this time the code should tell you a story and not seem like an implementation. So now when you're looking at the code after having understood what the code is trying to do, this time the code should look to you like a story that a developer has told another developer, and you should potentially not see code there. You should be seeing a story. And the only difference between the docs and the code is that the code tells you a story in Solidity, while the docs tell you a story in English, right? So that is the only difference between the docs and the code. That
That's beautiful.
the medium is different, but the thing is the same. So you have to be good enough at both the languages, at both English and Solidity, so that you understand where exactly the two stories do not match. And if you find something, that's an instant bug. Like that's you do not even need to check it. That's an instant bug. And this part of the audit, like everything from point 4 to point 7, is mostly doing threat modeling, where I try to find faults with the basic underlying assumptions of the protocol logic. Here, good understandings of economics, game theory, and DeFi landscape in general is helpful here. So I think this is the point why Spearbit DAO in their assessment test has this DeFi general knowledge section, because they understand and they truly want people to be in Spearbit DAO to have a very good general level of understanding of what the DeFi landscape is, right? So if you have all these things, good understandings of economics, game theory, and DeFi landscape, then that should give you a very good uh, place to do threat modeling for your protocol. So what does threat modeling even mean? I mean, in a very tangible surface level thing, it means that evaluate different situations. Okay. So different situations could be what happens if your contracts itself get blocklisted, what happens if a token that you're using heavily gets depegged, what happens if a bank run happens against your token, what happens if the rate of withdrawal from your protocol reaches such and such level, things like that. So these are the things that are not essentially bugs in the contract, but these are threats that your protocol should be robust against. And to be able to give those, to be able to arrive at those threats, you should have a very good understanding of what the protocol is trying to do, what is its unique feature, and what is the underlying economical concept. That's pretty much it. And very I mean very recently I had only been doing point 1 to point 9 in my audits, in my private audits, but very recently I've also started to include point 10. So point 10 is lastly think of breaking the protocol not as a black hat hacker, but as a competitor who is completely fine taking a financial hit just so that they can grief the protocol. So you have thought about breaking the protocol as a hacker, but you have not completely shifted your mindset to being a griefer and trying to break the protocol. You have to be, what should I say, really, really angry at your protocol. Think of it like you want to somehow do bad things to your ex, right? So that is the kind of mindset that you want to have here, that you're completely fine taking a financial hit, you're completely fine doing this and this, so that the protocol that is functioning just stops functioning. It does not benefit you in any way, but it harms the protocol that is in question. And once I started doing that, I mean, I've only done it twice, to be honest. Uh, I mean, you'll be surprised at what kind of attack vectors opens up when, like, when you stop trying to think it does not make economical sense for someone to do it, right? Many times when you report a bug in a bug bounty or in a contest, whatever, uh, they reply with, "Hey, it does not make economical sense to do this and do that." Yes, that is true in many cases that you would not spend 36 million just to be able to get 0.05% of a liquidation reward, but uh, you will be ready to spend 2x or 3x the money to harm the protocol in such a way that it stops functioning or it gives you a loss of X amount of money. That is the point of view of the griefer. So that is in totality the entire audit, what should I say, methodology that I have for my private audits. And now I have a few more sections, but they are only if someone wants to hear it. I mean, they are additional. So only if you want, if only if you guys want to hear it, we can, or if we can stop here.
I think if you have any important points in these additional parts that you want to go through, because I'm definitely sure that everybody want to hear, but I also want to consider your time. So just look if there's something that jumps your eye, and then we can talk about it. And if not, we can go to the questions.
Okay, sure. I think we can very quickly go through this. These are some really good to have steps that, I mean, I usually cannot go around doing this because of lack of time, even in private audits. It does not go on for more like a week or two, so I cannot do most of them every time. So these are good to have steps. So one of first of them, if that is that if a contest for a streaming protocol is coming up, then go through the publicly available audit reports of other streaming protocols. That makes sense. But that makes sense only when you are done from this part and you're here at this part, right? When you are trying to get the broader picture. Uh, the second thing is that go through the tests if the tests are available and get a very good idea of what particular area are under tested. And if an area is under tested, that means that the area requires your special attention, because if you think about it, someone why would someone avoid testing an area? It's either of two reasons. Either the dev was kind of subconsciously scared that they might not have done a good job there and thought of all possible attack vectors and are scared of testing it, or testing it was so difficult that they decided to forego it. And both the cases require you to go and have a very thorough look at why actually was it not tested, right? So that's the second point. And the third point is that even for the areas that are well tested, see if you can increase the sophistication level of fuzzing used. So this often leads to finding some really cool edge case bugs that aren't practically discoverable using manual analysis. So along with the, what should I say, um, private security audit services, I also happen to help protocols with their testing infrastructure setup and testing recommendations, things like that. And I've seen that more often, even after audits, when you really fuzz the shit out of your protocol, you really do find some cool edge casey bugs which aren't that bad, but they are like obvious bugs, and they can only have been discovered using very very fine grained fuzzing. So that is something that
Nice.
you can go for. Yeah. And slightly more extreme is that if your protocol is interacting with external contracts, you can go through the audit reports of the external contract and see what were the last changes that have been made to the external protocol since the last audit. So even if you do not go through the audit of the external protocol, you can definitely go through the changes that have been made since the last audit. That is something that's an easy, not an easy, but a relatively easy low hanging fruit in terms of competitions, because it gives you an edge compared to other competitors. Because this might not very often give you finding, but whenever it does give you a finding, it will most probably be a solo finding. So the last, I mean, thing is build out POCs. because proof of concepts are the ultimate challenge to your assumptions, and you'll be surprised how many times you are humbled. Because as a as a hacker, you are always trying to break things, and that means that you develop your own assumptions, your own biases that yes, this will break because I'm thinking so and so. But when you actually go out and try and code up a POC, you'll realize that okay, wait, this does not make sense. Okay, probably the protocol won't break. So this is the reason why Code Arena has started invite-only contest and Sherlock has penalties on wrong submissions because um, you cannot expect anyone to give you POCs within such short time of frame. So they have figured out different mechanisms for people to actually give valid findings and not spend the protocol's time on chasing down invalid bugs. So
Amazing,
this
buddy.
yeah. So this was some really good to have steps which I try to do, but I cannot always do. If you can, please take it up, please note it down, please do it. You are all helping the Web3 ecosystem, and these are all general tips for a better future, and all which are which we can ignore for the time being if the time is
Are you able
very high right now.
are you able to share this document with us, or is this like private to you?
Yeah, sure.
Just give us the PDF and it's good.
Okay, I'll share it where in
So there's a
chat, right?
there's a yeah, you can just drop it in the text chat. Um or
Okay.
maybe yeah, just post it in there, then I'll throw in the right place. No problem.
Okay, I'll just what I'll send it to you.
Great one, bro. Thank you. So I have a few questions from people here.
Sure,
And
sure, please.
so I'm gonna start with GM Hacker. So how deep you go into the first code review prior
How did
I mean how sorry, let me repeat that. How deep do you go into your first code review that is prior to your first documentation reading? Do you check every scope line of code?
hmm Okay, so how did I go as in like
If you
when I
click
did not have this particular system?
if you click on the talk, you're gonna see there's a small chat box thing, and you
Okay,
can check the questions in there.
okay, let me find it.
Just click on talks where the talk is happening, where everybody's listed, and when you put your mouse over the talks, you're gonna see a little
Oh,
open chat thing.
yeah,
Awesome.
nice. Okay, there are a lot of comments. Shoo, shoo, shoo. GM Hacker, looking forward to see. Okay, thank you. GM Hacker, HEVM cheat codes. How do you do in the first code review that you do prior to the documenting stage? Do you check every slot? Yes, I do check every